have not heard about.
Did he talk about his own mortality?
We talked a little bit about what it was like to go through the medical procedures that he went through. And we would talk about sitting on his back porch and appreciating the sunshine and appreciating the fresh air and looking at the flowers. And I think that if there was any person in the world who understood the value of life, it was Steve Jobs.
I mean, he often would say, in talking about his illness, you know, you got a sense of optimism somehow that he believed that he could overcome this. Was that simply for the benefit of others, or did he believe that somehow, because he believed in science and technology and believed that there were solutions to problems, that he might survive this?
You know, I think of Steve as our country's greatest innovator. And in his illness, I think he believed, like with many other things, that with sheer passion and sheer force of will, these were overcomable. And I think the quality of his life at the end and his ability, his discipline, really sort of showed those characteristics. And those are characteristics that all of us should admire.
When he was dealing with products, I've heard these anecdotal stories, there was a perfectionist, a man who looked at what was possible and insisted that it could be done. And even though you, or not you, but someone working with him might get a 2 a.m. phone call saying, what about this? And Steve would insist that he wanted it done even though the person buying the product might not know or might not even care, but he cared that it be the way that he thought it could be, the way he imagined it in his own mind.
This is a man who understood detail, and he cared the way an artist cares about every brushstroke. So it was important that everything be perfect, whether it's the packaging or the distribution or the branding or the software working and so forth and so on. He spent hours and hours preparing, for example, for his presentations, and over again would bring his staff up to the level of his presentation skills over and over again. Over and over again, Steve showed that this sort of obsession that he had around quality and beauty could be translated in the execution of the company.
Is there anybody like him that you know?
I do not. And again, hopefully in the future there will be other leaders as great, with a greater sense of beauty and taste as Steve. He talked a lot about where that came from, but it came from his early youth, that he actually cared about fonts and characters and ligatures and all the other things that were being invented at the time.
He also has talked about, in the famous Stanford commencement speech, remembering Stuart Brand's famous words. He said, "Stay hungry and stay foolish." But in a commencement speech that's remembered by all of us who give commencement speeches as almost as good as it can get, he understood how telling stories of life experiences, looking at where you failed or where you were inspired, was the way to connect and bring in the human element.
I think one of the things about great leaders is that they learn from the data before them. They learn from their failures. They learn from what worked and what didn't. As products would come along that wouldn't do as well, Steve would say, we made this mistake, we made this mistake, we fixed this, we have this other thing that we want to do. And Steve was particularly good at learning from the period that he called in the wilderness when he was at Next. And he had he spent a lot of time thinking about what he would do when he got back to Apple. And I think that period of time in his history allowed him to sort of think about what it would take to build what is clearly the most valuable technology company in the world today.
It clearly is. So why was he unsuccessful at Next? Or would you define that experience as unsuccessful?
Well, he would say that Next was before its time. What he did with Next is he built a platform that was very powerful. And the platform at Next is, in fact, the basis of the Mac OS. They use literally the same operating system and languages. And he was focused on chief information officers and so forth. I think ultimately, when people look back at this, they'll say that the next period was a period of time where he sort of organized his technology vision, he organized his team. And the next team, when they went back to Apple, were able to very quickly take the technology that he invented at Next and take it to what was then a lagging software and hardware platform at Apple and revitalize it. The subsequent transitions to the Intel platform and the other things that propelled the Mac to its current great success are a direct result of the architectural decisions that were made when he was at Next.
We're joined now also, and I hope Eric will stay with us and continue to have the conversation, someone that he knows well, Mark Andreessen, co-founder of Andreessen Horowitz, which is a venture capital firm. But Mark Andreessen is known as one of the thinkers in Silicon Valley. He is a man who was there when Netscape was created. He has been an early investor in some of the very important companies that have shaped Wall Street. I mean, have shaped Silicon Valley and shaped Wall Street as well. He also knew Steve very well. Mark, tell me your own thoughts tonight about what he meant, as Eric and I have been talking about, what he meant to you personally and what he meant to the way you saw the world that you live in.
Yeah, I guess I think Eric has said a lot of the things that can be said. The three ways I think I really admired him. One is he was the most amazing product visionary our industry has ever had, or probably ever will have. And I once said that when the iPhone came out, I said it's almost as if the product has been beamed in from 5 or 10 or 20 years in the future, and it's just arrived. And nobody in the industry had any idea it was even possible to build anything like that. And Steve is one of the only people in the history of business who's been able to do that kind of thing over and over again. Number one. Number two, company. He's built an amazing company in Apple. Apple today is an unbelievably strong company, not just in terms of its cash balance and its position in the market, but also in the depth of the talent, the culture, the people, the overall approach. And I think it's extraordinarily well set up to succeed in the years ahead because of Steve and because of all the work he put into building the company in the last 15 years. And then third, as a person, he's somebody who, the people who knew him, will all tell you the same thing, which is he touched people in an amazing way and did amazing things for an awful lot of people. And a lot of those stories I don't think have been told yet, and I'm sure will be in the years ahead. But he was also a great human being.
What would you add to that list of things that we don't know necessarily, that reflect on his humanity and his commitment to